after tonight. You don't have to look up at the stars. No, 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 no.
Come take a look at my dream world.
Tonight. You don't have to look up at the stars.
Chat, if you wanna come get it, then come for it. I'm so clean, my kick's nice, I'm Chuck Norris. Minute made the beat bounce, had to jump on it. Run for it, run, Gump Forrest Gump like hollow pumps, you gotta jump. No trouble, no double, I got a stun. You don't have to look up at the stars. Make one wish, you're looking at a star. Swag so fresh, you can put it in the jar. And the way I change gear, you can put me in the car. I remember when me and Seif used to sneak in every concert door. Now I got my feet in. Every day is Get Friday, no weekend.
You don't have to look up at the stars.
Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite live sports show that's not stuff about sports. That's correct. It's indeed hashtag this just in. But I have brought Jerm from Stuff About Sports and Miami's biggest fan, Larry Marshall. Gentlemen, what's going on tonight?
Good evening.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Well, you know what's up? A slew of trades like never seen before in this NBA offseason. And all it took was Washington to change one general manager. And, well, here we go. So all of a sudden he knew that giving Bradley Beal a supermax and a no trade clause was bad. So out went Bradley Beal into Phoenix, and it just kicked off one hell of a lot of trades. We can recap them. CP3 going to Washington, then ending up in Golden State in exchange for Jordan Poole. Boston started to strip it down first. They tried to trade Malcolm Brogdon, but Malcolm Brogdon's elbow said, hell no, I'm not going anywhere. So then it was Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis in a 3-team trade that has Marcus Smart currently in Memphis. I want to say today, John Collins in a clear salary dump is over in Utah from Atlanta in exchange for Rudy Gobert and a Mariah Carey CD. And there are so many other trades I've missed. So Jerm, after all of these trades, I've sent so many players and picks in the last, I want to say, week and a half, 2 weeks. Which team improved the most coming out of these last 2 weeks?
The team that improved most is the Memphis Grizzlies, trading for the one player that they absolutely needed, not just on the court, but also off the court. The Marcus Smart acquisition is probably the greatest trade of perfect player injected into the perfect need for the team that he was traded to. They needed a better version of Dillon Brooks, the Dillon Brooks that not only talks the trash, but also backs it up. And Dillon Brooks couldn't do that. So they got a guy that could do everything Dillon Brooks could do, but he's just better. And on top of that, they got somebody who, like Dillon Brooks, can bring the spirit and the attitude, but also tell them to not do ridiculous walk-up dances into games, into playoff games that they're down 3-0. And it's a fantastic move for the Memphis Grizzlies, who needed somebody who can be the adult in the room, which is odd to say about a Marcus Smart for anybody who knows his history. His evolution in this league, to me, is one of the greatest stories in the NBA, one of the most undertold stories. I hated Marcus Smart. Obviously, I'm a Sixers fan, so I would give up a toe for Marcus Smart to be a Sixer. He's the exact type of player I would want on my team. He is it's ironic that he came from Boston. He reminds me of Rajon Rondo, a limited skill set, but his impact is greater than what his skills bring. And I think for Memphis, they need exactly what they got in Marcus Smart, exactly what they lacked in the playoffs. And so, and then he'll obviously be able to fill in for Ja Morant while he's suspended for 25 games.
Forgot about that part, and I also wanted to lean towards that as well. Larry, do you agree? Is it Memphis trading for Marcus Smart or one of the other teams that had or involved in these trades?
Just want to say on the Memphis situation, I agree with everything Jerm said. The funny thing is about Memphis Grizzlies is when we look back at the previous generation of successful teams they had, it was Tony Allen. And the similarities between Tony Allen and Marcus Smart are so strikingly close. It's like they both got traded from Boston. They're both defensive specialists, and they got traded at the same age. Like, it's unreal. But to me, the team that got better, and this may be looked at as a funny answer, but to me, the team that made the most improvement was Washington. Like, they finally picked a direction. It's not like we're fighting for the play-in every year. We're like, no, these bad contracts, this Bradley Beal paying max money to like the 30th best player in the league is ridiculous. So now they've gotten rid of Porzingis, probably going to get rid of Kuzma, got rid of Beal, and we're to rebuild through the draft. We're going to tank. We're going to improve our draft picks for the next few years. And hopefully they don't have money on the Bucks. They don't have to deal with no trade clauses. They don't have. So I'm fully supporting this new general manager and somewhat leading Washington to the bottom. But at least there's a direction. It's not in the middle. You want to strive for the top, or you want to rebuild from the ground up. And I think is a good move. The improvement by subtraction.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, to piggyback off that, Jordan Poole is the perfect tank player, right? Like,
tank commander.
He's going to have a 50-point game next season, right? Like, he's that guy to fill in seats. He'll be exciting. He'll get some Sports Center top 10 plays, but he's not a player that you're going to build around. You can safely continue your tank and your salary dumps, but also be able to sell jerseys and tickets with a player like Jordan Poole. I found that very interesting that he ended up on that team.
Just ironic. And I was going to also add to Larry. So you don't pay the 30th best player in the league, but you're paying $140 million to the 98th best player in the league. But I agree. I like the direction. And also with Jerm, right? I almost answered this question with the Memphis Grizzlies, like for so many reasons. And on top of that, with Dillon Brooks, you moved off of Dillon Brooks, and unfortunately, you had to get rid of Tyus Jones, who you can arguably say is the best backup point guard in the league, like, arguably, in a time that you're going to be missing Ja Morant for reasons we don't need to go over again. But like when you saw what Dillon Brooks was during the postseason, let me bring up the numbers. No, we're talking about a guy. Where am I shooting? Like, he shot 31% from the field and 24 from three during the postseason. And for whatever you want to say about Marcus Smart's numbers during this postseason were actually very good. He averaged 15, 4, and 5, 45 from the field, and 36 from deep. Like, for I don't want to say a third, fourth best player on your team, that's pretty good if your team has championship aspirations. So as you said, Jerm, he's going to be the adult in the locker room. He's going to bring the defensive presence that Dillon Brooks had, but he adds actual offense, somebody who can actually space the floor and play make, something that Dillon Brooks could not do. And it's going to be, vital with the absence of Ja Morant. But I can't have this segment here not bring up my own Phoenix Suns. You all knew this was coming. It couldn't not do it, right? And the reason I say that, like, we sat down and saw what Phoenix did against Denver. And by Phoenix, I really mean Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Like, there was a game, I think it was game 3, the two of them combined for 86 of the 121 points that they scored in that game 3 victory. Like, I'm not even going to the math to say how much, other than to say that I was all of Phoenix's points. Then in game 4, it wasn't much better. I think it was like 72 of 129. It's clear that they needed help beyond a 38-year-old Chris Paul. So when you add a 3-time All-Star who had back-to-back seasons of scoring 30 points about 2 years ago, and you're adding him in replace of a guard, I mean, you are not going to bring back Chris Paul. You're going to waive him. Landry Shamet was not going to be a part of your future. And contenders don't care about second-round draft picks at all. So when you get a 3-time All-Star on a roster, like, you needed him. Granted, the roster isn't full as yet, but I have to say Phoenix improved the most because they needed more on that roster. I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything, Jerm.
Yeah, I mean, Bradley Beal is going to be excellent for you guys, the 40 games that he plays every season. So, I mean, very the 40 game, hopefully it'll be the opposite of the 40 games that Kevin Durant's going to play. And then so you put all that together, that's 80 games. So that's basically the whole season. You'll have one of both or, one or the other. Bradley Beal, you're going to have 3 top, be safe. 30 players on your starting lineup. So on any given night, you're going to have 3 of the best 5, starters out there. So again, like you mentioned, depth is going to be the issue. They got to fill out the roster. I don't know what their money situation's looking like, but I'm sure they'll do it. Every year we get these super teams, and there's like 4 guys on payroll, and they're like, oh, they're going to fill up 12 spots. They're going to do it. They'll figure it out. And so injury is going to derail this whole thing for you guys. Nobody's going to stop you. You're going to score 178 points every night, which is great. The problem is, as the season drags on, wear and tear on the body, how is that going to hold up? You're going to win a lot of games in the regular season, right? Brooklyn, like the injuries, we are going to derail you. And then once you get into the playoffs, you have to play 7-game series. And that's where the Phoenix Suns are going to run into trouble. Can they get some guy off the street that somehow gives them some magical minutes in the playoffs? It happens. Maybe. I mean, it's not impossible. It happens seemingly more often lately in the last couple of years. There's always some guy that we never heard of before earning themselves a contract. Miami just had, 3 of those guys that undrafted dudes that all of a sudden were getting primetime love on NBA Today. So, yeah, Phoenix obviously got better. It's just they need more. It's not enough, right? For me, when I look at these trades, I was tempted to say Boston. I think Kristaps Porzingis coming off a 23-8 season, going to Boston, but they're missing a play. It doesn't solve their playmaking issue. So I don't know what Kristaps Porzingis is going to do for Boston, really, because they still don't have a guy that can create plays for everybody. So Memphis, again, didn't need much, but they got exactly what they needed, and that's why I chose them over your beloved Phoenix Suns. But I like Bradley Beal, and I like Kevin Durant, and I like Devin Booker, so I hope they figure it out.
No, I had to go to Phoenix Suns because they're my team, and you already said Memphis, so
yeah, I got you.
Larry chose Wizards, so make the show a little diverse. But Larry, then, I haven't even mentioned all the trades, but for you, which one was the most surprising?
Oof, surprising. For maybe the Porzingis trade, because that seems like out of left field. We know with Beal, the Suns are, with the new owner, HBA, the Suns are big game hunters currently. But the Porzingis trade is strange because it didn't seem like they had a need at center, because they had 100-year-old Al Horford, and they had Time Lord. Yeah, Time Lord is always hurt. And Al Horford, at least Al Horford is old, but he's very reliable. And you figured, as you would say, their weaknesses was playmaking, but they got rid of one of their better playmakers and doubled down on center, which I guess for shooting purposes and rim protection. But I would say that's the most surprising, because similar to how I feel about the Beal trade, this is just a trade for a bigger name, if you get what I mean. It's like, yes, they got a better player, but in the terms of the team building aspect, I'm not sure if it like really improves the team. Yeah, Porzingis is a better player than Marcus Smart, but they already had rim protection, and they had 3-point shooting there with Al Horford, even though he was inconsistent. It didn't address their needs, and I feel the same way about the Beal trade. Like, yeah, you basically have 2 players who are the same. Like, Devin Booker is basically a better version of Bradley Beal. Like, so now you're doubling down on a skill set that you already had. So what about the other parts of the team that you have to fill out? So, yeah.
I agree. I didn't see this Kristaps Porzingis trade coming. Jerm, did you see another one that you didn't anticipate as well?
I mean, not to sound like a broken record, I'm just shocked that the Celtics would trade away Marcus Smart. They can't believe in Derek White as a playmaker or facilitator. I mean, he had 2 games where he did pretty well. I can't imagine those 2 games were the ones that they were like, yeah, you know what? Let's move on from this veteran who's proven himself year after year. So, I would say that would be the most surprising. I didn't see that coming. I saw that Washington was going to start dumping players. Kristaps, maybe the trade package overall was surprising. But the one that surprised me the most was the one that happened today, June 26th, for those who were listening live or listening today. The Hawks getting rid of John Collins for the bones of Rudy Gay and a 2nd-round pick. I mean, even for a salary dump, I feel like John Collins is worth a little more than that. I feel like his name for the last 2 years, 3 years, have come up in trades. Pretty big trades too, like trying to swing a big player to Atlanta. So the fact that they were only willing to take Rudy Gay in a second rounder is very surprising to me. I like John Collins. I think he's a good player. I don't know if he's the power forward of a championship team. I don't think he's that type of difference maker. I just think he's part of a good rotation. I think if John Collins is your power forward and you have a Sacramento Kings type or even a Phoenix Suns type team, that's a good player to have. So I'm shocked that Atlanta let him go for seemingly so little. Unless there's something's going on that I don't know about, it just looked weird to me.
Well, to answer that question for you, Jerm, it's this new CBA that's going to come into effect. Like, everyone talks about it. Like, the penalties, these salary cap penalties, are going to be stiff and severe. And I think going forward, you're only going to see more and more salary dumps like this. Like, John Collins is the first, and you're just going to see like teams trying to avoid this situation unless you're the Phoenix Suns. For me, and I don't disagree with you all, but for me, it was the Jordan Poole CP3 thing. And for so many reasons, obviously, me personally, I would have moved on from Jordan Poole as well, and as early as last season's trade deadline. But the reason it was kind of surprising is, one, I think 4 days before the actual trade itself, the new general manager, Mike Dunleavy, who we all grew up watching playing, said he's going to be part of the foreseeable future. And then, see you later, Jordan. And it's not just that they traded him, but I thought he would be almost immovable simply because of the 4 years, $140 million extension he has. Then his recent play in the playoffs, like, good gosh.
Yeah.
I think that dude averaged, like, I want to say, let me look at my notes, like 10 points on 34% from the field and 25 from three. I thought he'd be almost like untradeable at this situation, but like y'all said before, Washington is the perfect destination. Like, this is a perfect fit. Like, you're tanking, tank commander. This is the man that you want on your roster. And then, Neil, you can transition now to the next segment, because why it is also weird for me is the player you're getting back in Chris Paul, who is the antithesis of what the Golden State Warriors do on offense. I have to believe, because of his height and size, you're not going to play him and Steph Curry on the court at the same time. So that's one. Two, when you look at how the Warriors structure their offense, it's a lot of predicated on a lot of ball movement. I was watching JJ Redick on his Old Man and the Three podcast, and he said the Warriors lead the league in the least seconds of touches on the ball. In other words, like, I think they average 2.7 seconds per touch. Chris Paul leads the league in the most seconds per touch. I think about 5.6, 5.7. So like double that, even more double than that. And then the Warriors, I think he said, they ran the third fewest on ball screens. And Chris Paul, again, leads the league in on ball pick and rolls. This is, if you want the antithesis of your offense, Chris Paul is this. So to answer any question, do I like the trade? I like them getting rid of Jordan Poole because, like Larry mentioned before, this 2-time-9 thing was utter nonsense. This 2-time-9 thing could not work. And I think they quickly realized the young players, him, Kuminga, Moses Moody, they were not ready. And, they got rid of James Wiseman. These kids were not ready to help the team win championships. And they're trying to obviously get as much out of Steph Curry for as long as he's still a top 5 player in the league. So the only way this trade makes sense in terms of getting Chris Paul is if this eventually works out to a three-team deal, where you're moving Chris Paul for another star, like, and here it comes, guys, a Paul George, where you can actually get salaries to match, because that's the only reason I could see you bringing in Chris Paul, because of that $30 million salary, and then you could send it out for another star. Larry, do you like the trade, Chris Paul or Jordan Poole?
I agree with you where the part that was good was getting rid of Jordan Poole. I mean, I don't even have a problem with Chris Paul on the Warriors. My guess would be, as you put it just now, the how much ever money was guaranteed for this year, this upcoming season, to be used as a trade chip. So we don't know if Golden State will be his final destination, but let's say it is. Let's say he starts training camp on the Warriors. I kind of don't have a problem with it really, because I see that he would be like a $30 million backup, which obviously you don't want to have a backup point guard that's making $30 million. But the Miami Heat just did it with Kyle Lowry, right? And the way I see that can work, even with everything you said about how he's the antithesis to the style of play that the Warriors want to play, when you look at it, the Warriors play a brand of basketball where Clay, Steph, and Draymond are like the perfect fit for that basketball. And I guess Looney and maybe Gary Payton II. Not a lot of their other players fit into that style of play, which is why they had so many problems in the playoffs and the regular season. Because yes, the two-time thing didn't work because you had the championship players, and then you had the youngsters who wanted to play a different style of basketball. And it drove Steve Kerr insane.
You mean bad basketball?
Yeah, well, bad basketball. And I think if Chris Paul is on the team, he can if Chris Paul is on the team, he can kind of help the younger players, the Kumingas, the Moody's, even these young guys that they just drafted. What's the guy's name? Can't remember. The power forward that they drafted in the second round, and the guard that they just drafted in the first round. I can't remember his name at the point. But I think Chris Paul can help these dudes kind of be productive while the Draymonds, and instead of Draymond and Steph Curry throwing their mouthpiece at the crap that Jordan Poole is doing, Chris Paul, even though
can throw his mouthpiece then.
Yeah, no. Chris Paul doesn't play their style of basketball, but he's a veteran. He's still productive, and he knows how to control the offense. So I think they'll have some trust in Chris Paul that while the Warriors aren't doing, and also it's been how many years? 2015. It's been 8, 9 years that Warriors have been playing this basketball. I think the rest of the league kind of knows what they're doing. It's not a novelty anymore. They're scouted. They can't expect to play that one style forever. So Chris Paul is just giving them another look, another way that they can play, and I think it's fine for now.
And to add reference before I let Jerm jump in, the Warriors, I wanted to bring in this stat. When Steph Curry is on the court, I think they have the highest offensive net efficiency in the league. When he's off the court, they are indeed the worst. So I suspect if he does stay, Chris Paul is to help their offensive problems when Steph Curry is off the court. Jerm, do you like the trade?
Not only do I like the trade, I love the trade. It is what Larry was saying. He adds another dimension to the team. We just saw it. Who's better? Who's a better player, Jordan Poole or Chris Paul? It's Chris Paul. By that simple math, let's be simple here. Chris Paul automatically makes that team better by virtue of him being better than the player he's replacing. He's not going to start. He's going to run the second unit because guess what? When you just said it, when Steph Curry's off the court, what happens? Their offense tanks. He will run that bench unit 10 times better than Jordan Poole did by two simple things: slow tempo. That's what they need. They tried to run the same offense with Jordan Poole that they did with Steph Curry, and it didn't work. They need to slow it down. Chris Paul is a pick and roll guy. Guess what they got? They got Kuminga. They have Moody. They have Kevon Looney. They may have Draymond Green back, perhaps, if he doesn't sign with Portland. There are things that second unit can do that Chris Paul can help with. And who's this? They're going to mismatch units. Like these terms, starters, bench players, they're all going to play the same minutes. They are all going to play. I'm sure Paul and Steph are going to play minutes together. But what are you going to do? He changes how people defend. He is a vet. He's a general on the court. He's going to help everybody. And if worst case Draymond does indeed leave, you replace Draymond on court coaching leadership. So yeah, he will help the Warriors in more ways than one. I saw a lot of people hating on this trade. I don't understand why. Chris Paul is one of the top 10 players of this generation. You get a guy like that, you're automatically better. Even if he doesn't produce as what people think he should, him being on the team helps all the other players, specifically the young players. Clay, he's going to help Clay out. The times that he runs with Clay, running pick and roll offense with Klay Thompson, it's going to be deadly. It's going to work out really nice for the Warriors. So they should be very happy with this trade.
You know what's going to work out nice for the Warriors? Flipping him for Paul George. That's going to work out for the Warriors.
That's not happening.
It's not happening. It's not happening.
A guy can dream. Even though I don't want the Warriors to get better, I just want as many super teams out there as possible to make basketball exciting again. Well, you kind of touched on it, Larry, but I'll let you repeat for those who weren't here. Kristaps Porzingis is now in Boston at the expense of Marcus Smart because, again, Malcolm Brogdon's elbow and forearm didn't want to leave the tri-state area, apparently. So, Larry, why did Boston, because you did mention they already have Al Horford, they already have Time Lord, why did Boston make this move?
I think Al Horford getting a bit older is probably the reason why they made the trade, because he's long in the tooth. So they are deciding they're going down with the ship. They're saying, Justin Marvel, we hear you. We need more playmakers on this team. But you know what? We're going to believe in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and we're going to double down and make these guys our playmakers. And in doing so, they say, well, for that to work, we need to give them more space to operate. The reason they're making bad passes is because people have sagging off Al Horford. The reason they're making bad passes is because they're sagging off Marcus Smart. So you know what? The better shooters we put around Tatum, the easier passes they'll be able to make. So I think that's the only reason I think they made a trade, because Porzingis is a very good shooter. He had a very good year last year from shooting three. We all know he can shoot at the top of the arc at high volume. He has very good range, and he's not terrible on defense. He doesn't switch like Al Horford does, but he's a very good rim protector. So I guess they're looking as Al Horford. Al Horford was drafted in 2007. Like, he's been around a long time. So I think Al Horford probably isn't going to play a lot this year, and he probably is going to replace, like, we know Time Lord is going to get injured. So Al Horford is probably going in some backseat role, and Porzingis is going to take over. And his shooting, I think they're banking on his shooting to give Tatum and Jaylen Brown more space for them to be more efficient. We all know Jaylen Brown struggles with his ball handling, but if there's no second defender in his lap, he can cross over to the left. He won't lose the dribble, and then he'll be able to finish. But overall, I think that has to be the reason, right?
Or just sit down and wait for Jaylen Brown to cross over to his left and take it and go the next direction. Kind of like what your Miami Heat did. Do you have an even better explanation than Larry for this trade, Jerm?
It probably less to do with, I mean, they got 2 first-rounders out of the deal too. So, I mean, there's a lot of things going on for Boston that maybe have less to do with Porzingis, but he is a good player. He does help them pick and roll. He was abusing people from mid-range last year. He had one of the most efficient he was one of the most efficient players from mid-range in all of the NBA last year. And I went over it earlier. I mean, put up 20-something points last year, like a ridiculous amount. Like, he was like 29 and 8, something ridiculous like that. A very underrated player. A lot of that was because Wizards were playing a lot of garbage minutes, and maybe it'll even out with Boston. But he does help them in terms of scoring and not playmaking, but he opens up the offense a little bit more without a true playmaker, because you're going to have to pay attention to him, and you're going to have to hope that his passing is good for a lot of those Tatum and Jaylen Brown cuts. But I like the trade for Boston. They needed to do something. They needed somebody to compete offensively with Bam and Joel Embiid and Giannis. Just Time Lord's not going to get it done. I don't even know who the other, Al Horford. They're limited, right? At least Porzingis gives you a little bit of versatility. So, I mean, you need those types of players in today's NBA. for it to work. So, I mean, Boston tried something, and again, most importantly, they got 2 first-round picks from it. So, good for them.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I'm not a fan of moving on from Marcus Smart. And to Brad Stevens' credit, at least he did try Malcolm Brogdon first because he was supposed to go to the Clippers, but again, he didn't pass the physical. Like his injury was a concern for LA. So then they pivoted to Marcus Smart. And the reason I don't like moving on from Marcus Smart on a team that struggles with playmaking, Marcus Smart is likely one of the better ones, if not the best one on the team. And we don't need to talk about the fact that this man's a former defensive player of the year and he can space the floor. Granted, teams are willing to give it up, but he can space the floor. To y'all's point, though, like Kristaps Porzingis is an upgrade over Marcus Smart and at the position of forward center wherever you decide to play him. And I think, as Larry mentioned, right, Al Horford's age has to be a significant factor. The fact also that Al Horford is so inconsistent from 3. I think he shot 30% or less during that playoff run. And that's not what Kristaps Porzingis is. And even if Kristaps is not hitting shots, he's a threat to hit them. So teams are likely not going to dare him to shoot. So to Larry's point, again, you're opening up more space for these 2 players who struggle to ball handle and facilitate. I will say, I think a big part of this is Time Lord and his health. I think I was reading somewhere where Time Lord has only played, I think, 3 times in his 5 years in the league. Time Lord has played less than 40 games in a season. And he has only played, I think his highest is 61. He's never played 62 games in an entire season. So clearly they are worried about his health. And like it's an injury concern. And as Larry said, and you said, Jerm, Kristaps Porzingis still is a shot blocker. So this is an upgrade. Make no mistake. It's just that now that you've removed Marcus Smart, your biggest issue is only going to get worse from here. Like unless, and I've said this before, I know it's not going to happen, but the best trade that's not happened in terms of both sides, if I were Boston, I'd call Portland and say, hey, we got Jaylen Brown and these 2 first-round picks we just got for this Kristaps Porzingis deal. What's going to happen here? What's going to happen? Like, I dare you to find a better deal from somewhere else. And to me, Boston adding Damian Lillard, 1, immediately solves their issues of playmaking and ball handling, and 2, I think that trade vaults them to the best team in the East. But I can't take away Larry's joy in getting Damian Lillard. Yeah. You can't take away my joy in getting Bradley Beal, though. I told y'all.
For 40 games.
Yeah.
It's better than Chris Paul for 25.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and you mentioned Time Lord only playing at that. Those are Zion Williamson numbers right there. He's pulling those Zion.
It's just that he's not as good as Zion, so no one realizes. But yeah,
and doesn't have the Twitter drama.
Yeah,
Mariah Mills, baby, Mariah Mills. I think someone said,
"God bless him."
I think someone said Mariah Mills tweeting at Zion without reply is the most lopsided conversation since NASA trying to contact aliens. And they just like, you ain't lying. You ain't lying. Larry, I know I've made a lot about Phoenix getting Bradley Beal for almost next to nothing, but does the move make them a title contender or nah?
Let's see. I want to come in here. You know, you always rag about these Celtics, and it's time to put a little pin in your balloon.
Okay, next on to Jerm. Quickly, Jerm, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, title contender, it depends, right? Because you still have a roster to fill out. Do you really think that Cameron Payne is going to be your starting point guard and DeAndre Ayton is going to be your starting center? I would say I think Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant as a core is good enough to make you title contenders. However, what kind of title contender are you? A threat to the Nuggets? I would say no, because 1, there's no one to guard Jokic and no one to guard Murray, so that's a problem. Are you, I guess, a contender in the mix? Sure, but I don't think that y'all are making these trades to be in the mix. You guys making these moves to be the favorite. So I would say contenders, yes, because you have Kevin Durant. You basically have 2 top 10 players in my eyes, and Bradley Beal, who's probably top 30. But my issue with the Suns since 2017 has been Deandre Ayton.
You and me both, maybe. You and me both.
In 2021, every time I come on the show, it's like 2021, people's like, oh, DeAndre Ayton had a great playoffs. He dominated against a lot of inferior competition, sure. And then when they got in the finals against Milwaukee, it was a struggle session. So what has to happen for Phoenix is if they're able to, and it doesn't seem like they are based on like the reports that, they're prepared to go into the regular season with Ayton. If they're able to like just turn Ayton into some like role players, they don't even have to be like very good, just people with a pulse. Like Justin back in 2008 would be good enough. Like 3 of those guys would be good enough for this team to be, I would say, a title contender, but I can't get there with the holes at the other position just yet. I can't get there.
I'm actually agreeing with Larry here, to be quite honest. Jerm, do you agree or is Bradley Beal going to put them over the top?
I mean, again, how are we defining title contender? If you're top 5 in the conference, I guess by definition you're a title contender. If you're a top seed, top 4 or 5 seed, can they get there? Sure. But on the other hand, they're also hosting Jabari Parker for a workout.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, it's hard for me to say title contender. You know what I mean? I think they're going to be a top 10 team in the league, top 5 team in the West. So by virtue, I guess I wouldn't call any other top 10 team not a title contender. So I guess so. It's not realistic to me though, because they still lack depth. The same issues they had last year. They lack depth. They lack defense. They lack size, especially if they are going to indeed trade Ayton. I don't know. We said earlier, Dunleavy gave, we're never going to trade this guy. He's the future. Anytime I hear somebody say that, that's the kiss of death. You're getting traded, buddy. I mean, that's just the way it is. It happens all the time. You get the coaches or the GM. No, this guy's part of the plan, he's part of the trading plan, and we got him on out of here. So I have to, they will be a top team. I do not think they are a title contender unless, again, they get some magical help from their rookies and some, they're gonna fill out the roster with vet minimums. Again, Jabari Parker is going in for a workout. So Justin, I'm sorry, bud. I mean, you're gonna have to rely on the paper mache built knees of Jabari Parker to help you to an NBA title. But maybe again, you have the best trio in basketball. That has to account for something. That it has to. Again, health. If I'm going to assume that they're going to stay healthy, if that's the case, 3 players can get it done. It happened in Miami, right? They got a bunch of vets to contribute in key moments. They had Norris Cole and Mario Chalmers out there giving you meaningful minutes. So I can't say it can't happen because we've watched it happen. But the West is stacked, man, and so. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the rest of the roster.
Oh, so like y'all said, right? I think this move puts them as the second best team in the West, which I think they already were in the playoffs. Yeah, I think so, Jerm, because the Lakers, do you think Lakers are better? Do you think, I don't know, the Clippers are better? Like they
the
already talking
Lakers
about moving up.
can get better. They can
Very
get
true.
better.
Yeah. Free agency is a hell of a thing, which the Suns aren't in anymore. So right now, I think they're the second best team in the West, but for what they've done, they still can't contend with Denver. Like, I will say this, they've gotten better. As I said, when you move on from a 38-year-old point guard that you were going to waive anyway, and Landry Shamet was never going to be a part of the future, definitely not going to be part of the team next season. So like to add Bradley Beal, you had already improved. But the reality of the situation, you need a lot of wing depth because beyond beyond Booker, beyond Beal, and then maybe Josh Okogie if you bring him back. Like that's it in terms of wings. Like that's it. You're gonna have to add wing depth. I have to believe this team cannot start the season with Campaign as their starting point guard or the only point guard in the roster. This just can't happen. And I don't know what else is there to say really. So like Neil, you can then transition right now
Well, no,
because
I have something else to add. Um, another issue with this team is style of play, and I think Frank Vogel is going to have his work cut out for him because say what you will about Chris Paul. Chris Paul gave you another dimension, another way to play, which is pick and roll, setting up Ayton. Now that Chris Paul is gone, Ayton has nobody to set him up. It's like nothing. Ayton is just going to be there as a screen setting machine. Like, I think if Ayton didn't want to be there before, he definitely doesn't want to be there now. And yes, three of your best players kind of all play the same way. They're all jump shooters. They don't shoot a lot of threes, funny enough. With players that are such great shooters, their three-point volume is quite low. And KD and Booker can get to the line, but they're not like these foul merchants, like these guys that flail and get to the line a lot. So I think that was one of the downsides to the trade, whereas, yeah, you have three top X players, but it's a lot of redundancy.
And that's what I'm saying. For this team, you're going to have to trade Ayton. First, you got to get depth. And that's the only asset. You're not going to get rid of Kevin Durant after giving up all those picks to get him and players. You're not going to get rid of Booker, obviously, another top 10 player. So the only asset you have is
Beal.
first Ayton. So you only have Ayton as an asset. But second and most importantly, I think the locker room is done with Ayton. I told you, Larry, in a private chat, the moment that Ayton exited Game 5 with a supposed rib injury and didn't turn up for Game 6, an elimination game at that, told you the locker room was done and Game 5 was Ayton's last in a Phoenix uniform. We already know the reports that he and Monty never saw eye to eye. But as a player, can you imagine you're battling for your playoff lives and all of a sudden one of your key players says, nope, I'm not playing this game. Like, you know the player that Devin Booker is for sure because he comes from that Mamba mentality. Like, that's not going to sit well with Devin Booker, although there are videos that surfaced today of him and Kevin Durant in Ayton's home country of the Bahamas, which would lead me to believe if they're there for DeAndre Ayton and not for holiday purposes.
Well, one point is that also that is 1 year removed from Game 7 where it was that he refused to go back into the game or something. So
yeah, he refused to go back into game against Dallas. So again, these are two elimination games in successive years in which you said, nope. How does that sit with competitors? And then the next thing that y'all mentioned, bringing in Frank Vogel. Frank Vogel was brought in because our defense is terrible. And the one thing that Frank Vogel has always done in terms of the pillar of his defenses is have a ring protecting big. That is not DeAndre Ayton. Like when you look at his time in Indiana, he had Roy Hibbert. Then you look at Lakers, he had Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. That is what Frank Vogel, that's a pillar of his defense. DeAndre Ayton has not even averaged a block a game for the last 2 seasons. 2 seasons has not averaged a block a game. I do not see a Frank Vogel-led defense putting up with somebody like DeAndre Ayton. Go ahead, Jerm.
I mean, but that's the coach's job, right? It's to say, hey, Ayton, this is what you've been doing these last few years, and it's not working. Trust me. This is what buy-in is about, right? He's supposed to go in there. I think the not having a playmaker is an overstated thing that people like to say when there's not a traditional point guard. But how often has a traditional point guard won? You don't need a traditional point guard when you have 3 elite one-on-one players. You run the pick and roll, and you pick your poison because Kevin Durant is the most unstoppable force we have ever seen play basketball. Devin Booker is the most box office scorer in the NBA today. And Bradley Beal, again, single-handedly carried that Washington Wizards franchise. Bradley Beal became a star player in Washington somehow because he is an elite one-on-one player. So you don't need a ball. You don't need a playmaker. Frank Vogel loves the pick and roll. This team is tailor-made for Frank Vogel. He's going to run the pick and roll with his 3 star players. He's going to use backdoor cuts with DeAndre Ayton, and he's going to force DeAndre Ayton to be a rim protector. That's the plan. And I mean, it may not work, but that's the plan. And Frank Vogel said it in his introductory press conference. He has big plans for Ayton. Ayton ain't going nowhere. He's going to transform Ayton. He's going to get buy-in from Ayton. Ayton will earn that respect to that team because he's not going to have a choice. This team is very, they relied on him now, and also now Ayton. This is probably better for Ayton as a player because the pressure's now off of him. Instead of being the second or third best player on the team, he only has to be the fourth best player on the team. And so, you get relegated to a role where the pressure is off of you. They're not expecting anything of Ayton now. Hey, grab some rebounds. We don't need you to be Dikembe Mutombo out there. We need you to get some rebounds, protect the rim, and don't let anybody inside here. And again, that's the coach's job, is to get that buy-in offensively. Again, I think not having a traditional point guard isn't going to matter as much when you have three elite scorers in the rotation, and at least two of them are going to be on the court at all times. So the Suns will be okay. It's just, again, filling out that roster around those four players is going to be key.
So that means then I should have asked, sorry, Jerm, you are saying the Suns should keep DeAndre Ayton then?
Again, should, and it depends what you can get, right? Like if the Hall, you need a big. So unless you're going to get a big that can contribute, because they're going to need an offensive scoring big, you have to, they need somebody else. So you have to decide. Frank Vogel is going to have to preach team defense. I think defensively, Booker and Durant and Beal, all of them are kind of underrated. So I think the team defense will be there. You're still going to need in the West. You're going to need a scoring big, period. And so they probably should keep Ayton. Again, if they can flip him, we've seen stranger things. But I mean, I don't know how much better you're going to get than DeAndre Ayton. What are you going to bring in, Brook Lopez? Like, is that is that something you're willing to do? Again, see what I'm saying? I mean, I probably would too, but it's that they're not that far apart. So it's kind of like, all right, what do you do? So I don't know. Ayton to me is young enough. He can get it. Again, different coach, different coaching styles. He brought in a bunch of people over from the Lakers with him. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Sorry for not segueing properly for our viewers. For the entire offseason thus far, there were rumors that the Phoenix Suns were trying to shop DeAndre Ayton, whether it was to Atlanta, to Dallas, to Indiana, and it would seem like all of those efforts have failed, to the point Chris Haynes put out a report that the Suns plan to go forward this season with DeAndre Ayton as their starting center. Larry, do you agree with that move? Do you think the Suns should continue trying to shop Ayton?
Well, as Jerm said just now, is like, what are the options? I think they're moving forward with Ayton because there's nothing out there. I don't think any teams want him. The team, like, the real issue for the Suns is when you trade Ayton, you also need back a center. So you have to find a team that wants Ayton and also is willing to give you back pieces that you need to fill out your team. So it's going to be hard. So any team that wants Ayton has to be a team, I guess, that's trying to compete. And teams that are trying to compete probably already have a good enough center. So what's the purpose of trading for Ayton, right? So the Suns seem to realize, well, instead of, they can quit, like as Jerm was saying about teams that say, yeah, we're moving forward to Ayton, but while in the background they're like trying to like get rid of him for like anything for cents on the dollar. But I think publicly they have to say, yeah, we're moving forward with Ayton, because I guess they can tell that Ayton's temperament is one that's, he kind of needs the backing. He's not one of these like self-motivators, it doesn't look like. And I know a lot of Suns fans, because I see like the comments where they're saying, Ayton's just interested in video games. He doesn't care about getting better. He doesn't want to dunk the ball. All those are probably true, right? But I think he needs the reinforcement from the team to kind of trick him into buying in until they could trade him for something better, which I don't know what is. So I guess to answer your question is, I think they should do both. They should be ready to move forward with Ayton while also trying to get the best package for him.
Would you rather have DeAndre Ayton? So what would work, right? Would you want Al Horford, right? You know what I mean? Would you trade? Would you want Ben Simmons? Trade him to Brooklyn. He gives you the two things that you need, right? Defense and a point guard. You just complained about it.
I don't think Brooklyn wants. They have Nick Claxton. They think Nick Claxton is probably better than Ayton. I
got you. I'm speaking from the Phoenix Suns perspective, right? Like so. But again, that's not a drastic. Like now you're talking about needs. I'd rather. Hey, Deandre Ayton, let's not focus on 20 and 10. Let's focus on 12 and 8 and play hustle defense. That makes a difference. That's Frank Vogel's job, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and therein lays the problem, Jerm. Remember, you said, like, and I would agree with you if this is a normal human being. Or sorry, let me not say that. If this was somebody else, not named DeAndre Ayton, like.
Well, one second, Justin, and also remember he was drafted number 1 overall, so that also plays a whole part in how he views himself and how others are going to view him. So yeah,
exactly. So like where you said, Jerm, where he no longer has to be the second or third best player, I think that upsets him. I think he wants a larger role, and that's why you don't keep him, because he's going to pout when the touches don't come. Because obviously, if you have a team with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, you shouldn't be giving DeAndre Ayton a ton of touches. If DeAndre Ayton had a high basketball IQ, he would realize the way to get my points is attack the offensive glass, because there's going to be so much attention played or put on those 3 scorers. I can get the offensive glass and I can get points, but that's not who he is. And I think that's a problem. Then we've tried time and time and time. Coaches have tried to make him a defensive stopper, tried to at least get him to block shots. And that's not who he is. Like you saw, and I mean, granted, Jokic is probably the best player in the NBA right now, but you've seen that Jokic has had his way with him time and time again. Anthony Davis has had his way with him. Like, this is not a good defensive player, and this is not one. If he doesn't get his touches, he doesn't care about the other end of the floor. And that's why you see, like, you have to move on from him, right? I think also,
didn't he average 10 rebounds last year? He like had 18. He had like 18 and 10, and Monty Williams hated him. So like, I'm willing to give him a chance with Frank Vogel again.
I'm going to get to that now.
Yeah.
So then, like, where was he going with this?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I had to look up his numbers because I'm pretty. I mean, it wasn't a good year. He still averaged, 18 and 10. And he plays good switch. I mean, to me, I don't think he's nearly as bad a defender as people give him.
I missed his stat, but he ranks one of the worst defenders in the league.
Yeah,
like
especially around the rim.
Not even adding positions. Like, he's just one of the worst defenders in the league. Period. And like, I think Phoenix is at fault here because, as Larry said, you're just gonna have to tell yourself you're going to get better from simply moving on. So you ask me, Jerm, what would I take? I tell you, I'd take Clint Capella easily over DeAndre Ayton right now, simply because I know you're going to have rim protection. You're going to have a guy running the rim, and just somebody who can play a modicum of defense.
I think
and then
Capella
in getting,
might just be better than Ayton.
It's hard to say that about a guy who got averaged 10 rebounds a game. Like, it's there. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ability is there. You don't just get 10 rebounds just by not trying.
He's 7 feet. Like, someone has to get a rebound.
So he can protect, but he has the ability to be around the rim. You just need the coach, the leadership. Like, you don't need him to score now. Hey, we don't need you to score.
And that's the problem. He wants to score.
He wants to score.
He wants to score basketball. Yeah. Therein lays a problem. And then I think Phoenix has to tell themselves, you're going to have to take cents on the dollar. Like, whatever you get, trade him for, even if, because for me, best case scenario,
Ben
and
Simmons.
It was such a high hope.
That's so good.
I was hoping for Miles Turner and rotational pieces.
Ooh, that'd be nice. That would have been nice.
And it would have answered all of our problems immediately. Spacing the floor, rim protection. But obviously, Indiana's not biting on that. And then, so I said afterwards, it's like, take cents on the dollar and go for rotation pieces. But it comes across as Phoenix is telling themselves they are going for equal value or Ayton stays. And I think that is an error. I think you just have to tell yourself, look, we are better off without him. Find somebody who can protect the rim no matter how bad offensively they are. But I think it's just greed here, and Phoenix is trying to get equal value. And everyone knowing that Phoenix wants to move on from DeAndre Ayton and seeing what's happened in the playoffs, you're just not going to get that equal value. I know, Jerm, you want to keep defending, so go ahead.
No, I mean, no, you're the Suns fan. I don't like to write players off when there's a lot of off the court turmoil with that team, especially when the guy, even if you want to consider it a bad year, I mean, put up 18 and 10. Like, the talent is there, and replacing that because you just don't like the guy or you think it's not going to good fit. He has a lot to offer. So I would like to see what Frank Vogel does with him. But everybody's gettable, right? Like, it just depends what you can get. But I'm not willing to just do a John Collins, Rudy Gay second round pick dump on the guy. Like, that's crazy to me. So I would much rather I'd much rather see Phoenix try to get Tobias Harris. That would be a good pickup for y'all. Like, Tobias Harris also answers a lot of the issues
I told Justin
that you guys would have.
Like, why wouldn't you do that?
Well, no, it's the Sixers. The Sixers aren't trading Tobias Harris. Nick
Really?
Nurse loves him. The front. I know the fans. People get tied up on money, like what these players are making, and not paying attention to anything else. Tobias Harris had the second highest plus minus on the team last year. His PER was, it was positive. Like, he doesn't hurt the team, but he doesn't, if he doesn't average 100 points per game and makes all his free throws,
but then
fans think
you
he's
have
not
no-
good. So.
You have no need for Ayton, though.
No, he would get re-rotated.
Well,
right?
Again, that's the other part.
Yeah, it had to be a
3-team trade.
The Sixers are not trading
They-
Tobias
they
Harris.
should.
That's just, I mean,
They should.
that's all that was.
So I'm going to throw in a surprise segment as we are well ahead of schedule. Larry's Heat, I know he's hoping for Damian Lillard. Do you think the Trailblazers move on from Damian Lillard? And who do they trade him to if you do think they're going to trade him?
I know I saw reports today that that Damian Lillard's peoples were to meet with the Trailblazers to pick a direction. I know I'm kind of biased in this question because it's like, do you think? I'm like, yeah, I hope so. They should get rid of him and they should trade him to the Heat. That's a tough one. I think if I had to look at it, it makes, like, logically speaking, it makes the most sense because they just drafted a point guard who's projected to be like a franchise player in the future. And if Dame wants to win right now, obviously that's a conflict. Like, you can't do both. Like, you're not good enough to be, as the Warriors, to have two timelines. Like, you don't even have one timeline. So if you're Portland, I think Portland, if you're looking at it from Portland's perspective, I would be like, please, Dame, come in here and ask for trade, please, so that we can pick a direction, build around Scoot, build around Shaden Sharp, who I like a lot. Who else do they have?
You don't like Anthony Simons?
So I think Simons he's not really like a young player anymore. He's like making like $25 million a year, but he can be traded for like draft picks or whatever. So I think they need to come to an agreement and be like, it's best to move on. We know Portland loves Lillard. We know Lillard loves Portland. But if you're looking at it in terms of like basketball and for the best for both parties, it's time. Scoot is the one. Like, Scoot is like the meme where the guy's like looking back at the girl. Like, Scoot is the girl. Like, yes, it's time to move on from Dame. And where should Dame want to go to? I know you brought up the Boston scenario. I guess, is that a better package than what Miami could offer? I'm biased, so maybe. I know Brooklyn is also a team with a lot of draft picks that they just got from Phoenix. I'm just going to say Miami. First of all, we heard Dame Lillard say himself that he is a big Bam fan and that Bam and the Heat will be one of his first choices. So you know what? I'm going with that. The Heat with Jimmy Butler, Henry Butler, and Bam Adebayo would be the premier destination for Dame Lillard. Forget what they could send back. Forget it. Furthermore, before I go on, Portland should just say, Dame, pick a destination. We don't care what we get back. You've done right by us for so long. So, as a favor, like, Dame Lillard doesn't have a no trade clause like Bradley Beal does. But because of his standing in the organization, they could just say, like, you know what, pick a destination and we're going to trade you there. I think that's what Portland should do. But again, I'm biased. Like, what else am I going to say?
I'd say this. I agree with you, Larry. I have said early on the show that Boston makes the most sense in terms of what Portland could get, because you would get Jaylen Brown, who would be the best player in any trade package currently out there. But Damian Lillard has already said he's not going to Boston. So, or he would not want to go to Boston. So if I was Portland, I wouldn't want to tick him off. I agree with you, Larry. He should want to go to Miami. That makes the most sense. And I do think drafting Scoot Henderson at number 3, the moment that they didn't use the number 3 overall pick in a trade package, signaled to me the intent that they are looking to move on from Damian Lillard, because you have to know Lillard is not about playing with another rookie and wasting time on another rebuild. So, Jerm, do you think Portland's going to move on? And if so, where do they send Damian Lillard?
I'm sick of Damian Lillard. Like, every season we do this nonsense with this guy. Leave or don't leave, man. We just stop crying that you guys are losing every year. Like, just pick one. So, I mean, I'm just so sick of hearing every year. It's like, don't want to leave. Then you end up in Portland, and then you complain about it halfway through the season because you guys aren't winning as much as you should. All right. So, in my head, I did 2 scenarios. If he does indeed stay, the main priority is to re-sign Jeremy Grant and then try to sign a Draymond Green or somebody, because he's, or some other high-end free agent, which there aren't many. So that's probably not going to happen. So I thought, okay, where can he go? He doesn't want to go to a rebuild situation. Going to Miami makes them Phoenix East, because then they're not going to have any depth, because you guys are going to have to get rid of Tyler Hero and Caleb Martin and all your young players that you guys were rooting and raving about all through these playoffs.
Undrafted guys. We got those guys in a lab.
I feel you.
Waiting. We will make players.
There's one team that can offer good compensation and doesn't have to lose much, and it puts Damian Lillard in the best possible position. And that team is the Milwaukee Bucks. Pairing Dame and Giannis, and you send Chris Middleton, who wants $40 million, and Bobby Portis to Portland for Dame Lillard. You have Drew Holiday, you have Dame, you have Giannis, you have Brook Lopez, you have good players around a good bench, Joe Ingles. You have the perfect roster for Damian Lillard to go to help, and it would give him his best opportunity to win a title, because they'll have depth, they'll have a good coach, they'll have a star player to play with. He's not going to be on a super stacked team, which is reportedly what he doesn't want to go do. So, I don't know if Miami fits the bills of a super stacked team. He apparently doesn't want to go to a team with 3 other All-Stars. This guy's ridiculous. Then stay in Portland, then, you jerk. All right, you can't have it all. So, if he was to leave Portland, in terms of not giving up a package that would also hamstring the team, much like what your Phoenix Suns just did, much like what other teams have done to try to put 3 or 4 guys together. Milwaukee makes a lot of sense for him, because it checks all the boxes in terms of his wish list, no matter how ridiculous it is for him. That's, if he was to leave Portland, Milwaukee would be, for me, the spot that
it's
makes
just that
sense.
Players just don't want to come here. Like in any sport,
yeah,
and I can't blame them. There's no diversity. There's no nightlife, and it's cold. No one ever says, you know what? You know where you want to go? Wisconsin. That's where you want to go.
Yeah, but that's the power of Giannis. I mean, at the end of the day, Phoenix is going to get a bunch of ring chasing vets because they have a good opportunity to win. You have a guy like Giannis. I mean, that's going to bring free agents. It's going to, so enjoy it while it lasts, Wisconsin, because that's like a once in a lifetime thing. You got a guy, you have a top 3 player in the league, and now you can get another high end player to help try to win a championship. So that's the only saving grace, right? Like that's the only way a city like Milwaukee and Wisconsin and these other states that nobody wants to go to. Cleveland does it with LeBron. Like there are a number of warehouses and boats out there. Nobody wants to, they build ships out there and they don't even have any oceans. And yet, but LeBron James brings people to Cleveland. I don't know.
let's bring us to our end right now. Thank you guys. I had so much fun. I'd like to go on and on and on, but actually, well, there's College World Series. Yeah, I thought there was no sports for me to go and watch, but yeah, I do like baseball.
Yeah.
Jerm shouldn't like
Slam
Jerm
ball.
shouldn't like baseball, and neither should Larry because one is a Mets fan and the other is a Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
So, Jerm, before we get on up out of here, please let the kind folks know how to find you and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, we have a live show tomorrow. That'd be Tuesday, June 27th. You can catch that at www.giveusashot.network. I host a show called Stuff About Sports. The Give Us a Shot Network is a place where all podcasts who don't know where to start or need help launching their podcast can come. We've built a pretty good network here. We're doing a lot of good things. We have a partnership with Fox Sports Radio in Philadelphia and Trenton. So, check everything network related at www.giveusashot.network. And at the Give Us a Shot YouTube page, you can catch Stuff About Sports tomorrow, 8:30 p.m.
Larry, please tune in here. So whenever you're done going to Give Us a Shot Network, like, subscribe, and just view all their content, come back here, like, subscribe. We are on every Monday night right here on YouTube, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, only on YouTube. For our short form content, you can find us on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. Hashtag #ThisJustIn. Please put in the hashtag you do not want Max Kellerman, even though his show is about to end. So the original This Just In will stand as the only This Just In. That's what happens. That's what happens when you go after Pat McAfee. Somebody's going to have to lose, and sorry about that, Max. So for Larry, for Jerm, I'm indeed Justin of hashtag This Just In signing out. Thank you so very much, and I'll see you back here on Monday.
I know that after tonight, you don't have to look up at the stars. No, 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 no. I
Come take a look at my
that
dream
tonight,
world.
you don't have to look up at the stars.
Check. If you wanna come get it, then come for it. I'm so clean, my kick's nice, I'm Chuck Norris. Minute made the beat bounce, had to jump on it. Run for it, run